All right, people. So, as I've been saying, Anthony Albanese is the worst prime minister in Australia's history. And out of his many blunders, the most recent blunder is him jeopardizing our alliance with the United States. So, he has something to say on that. But having said that, though, I want to be fair in my criticism. So, I think he's handling the current oil crisis really well, as far as Australia is concerned. I think we are not going to be running dry at least until May. So he has successfully steered the ship, so to speak, no pun intended, out of dangerous waters. So he's done well on that front. He could have done better, but you know what? Fair enough. Especially after COVID. He's been in power since 2023 or 2, I think. So he could have done better. We should have learned something from the COVID catastrophe. We should be self-sufficient, or we should have more oil in our reserves. But okay, fine. But let's talk about the more pressing issue. He's been asked about his role in jeopardizing our alliance with the US. And as you know, Trump has criticized Australia at least on 3 occasions where he said that Australia did not give a lending hand.
You know who else didn't help us? Australia didn't help us.
So I'm not saying that our alliance is completely over, but I think he could have done better. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Albanese handled it really well. Only time will tell. So let's have a listen to what he has to say.
Donald Trump says he is now planning a blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. We understand that's meant to take place from midnight our time tonight. Do you wake up in the morning at the moment and pick up your phone and think, goodness me, what is the president up to now?
No, I do wake up in the morning and there's usually some change in the circumstances in the Middle East. And what I want to see is to wake up in the morning and see that peace has broken out on a permanent basis, that we have de-escalation, that we have an end to civilian loss of life, we have an end to...
There's not that much of a civilian loss of life, thanks to President Trump, who's the most humane president in history. That thin Long Island, I keep forgetting his name, it's got 140,000 people living in there, and that's where most of the attacks on the ships going through the Strait of Hormuz come from. Obliterate that island. I'm not suggesting that, but I'm saying he could do that. Sure, a lot of civilians will die, but at least the threat will be neutralized and the world economy will get back on track. He could do that, but he's not doing that. He's giving peace a real chance. He's literally begging the Iranians to be rational actors and stop their attempts of acquiring a nuclear weapon and stop holding the world a hostage. Australia's allies, like the UAE and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, they're also not happy. They don't want peace to break out right now because that would give the Islamic regime an unsaleable hand in this war. They have learned that they can now hold the entire world economy hostage. They can block the Strait of Hormuz and they can bully their neighboring countries. And no one can do anything about it. Sorry, we can't agree to that. Trump can't agree to that. Even though Trump might want to get out of this war, he cannot leave like that. And with that in mind, it would have been nice to give a bit of a helping hand to the United States, because we are lucky that the most powerful country in the world is on our side, or we can be on their side because of our shared values and therefore shared interests. But look, I get it, okay? I get it. Every country has to look out for its own interests. We have to look out for our own interests. But we are so far away from the reach of the IRGC that it was the perfect time for us to show our worth. Now we look weak.
Loss of civilian infrastructure, and that, importantly, the Strait of Hormuz is about to be open with freedom of navigation.
Yes.
That's what I want to see, and that's what Australians want to see, and that's what global citizens want to see as well, because this global conflict on the other side of the world is having an impact here, and it's having an impact right around the world.
Mr. Trump says a lot of things, of course, but he also said this morning that numerous countries are going to help with this blockade. Has Australia been asked to help?
We haven't been asked to help. What we have done is continue to provide support. I've extended the period of service of our Wedgetail aircraft in the Middle East that's providing defensive support, particularly to the UAE and to Gulf countries that aren't participants in the war but have been victims of it as a result of Iran's unprovoked attacks. And, of course, there are many Australian citizens, of course, particularly in the UAE, in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, around about 20,000. And so we have very much an interest in providing that defensive support for our friends there. And that's
one criticism of President Trump I do have is that he did not explicitly ask Australia, because Anthony Albanese has repeatedly said that we haven't been asked. Now, I know Tony Abbott has said, and I am also of the view, that we should have volunteered, okay? But that would have meant that Iran would have declared war on us, and that would have some really long-term consequences. But we don't get any oil directly through the Strait of Hormuz. We get our finished oil from Singapore and Japan, and we give them natural gas. And this is how Anthony Albanese actually cleverly got us out of this impending fuel crisis, because Albanese said to both Singapore and Japan that we are a reliable partner. We provide you gas regularly, reliably. You never have to worry about that. Our shipping lanes are always open between Singapore, Japan, and us. Therefore, you should reciprocate that. Now, that gave us enormous leverage, and I think that's why we're safe. So that means that Iran has no pull on us. Now, I know the IRGC could say that we're not going to let Saudi oil to Japan and Singapore because they're giving oil to Australia, which has declared war on us. Now, that is a possibility, which the Prime Minister might have considered and would have said that, okay, we have to navigate through it carefully. If the US doesn't ask us for direct help, then maybe we can say you didn't ask for it. So you know what, to be fair, I think Albanese might have handled it a lot more smarter than I initially thought. Okay, Albanese, but you're still the worst Prime Minister in Australia's history, because you're destroying Australia by flooding Australia with third world migrants.
what we were asked to do by the UAE, and that is what we have done.
Do you think a blockade is going to achieve anything at all?
Well, I want to see the resumption of peace talks. We want to see an end to this conflict. It's having a devastating impact on the global economy, and the longer it goes, the bigger the impact will be and the longer the tail will be as well. And so
there's another argument to that as well, that the world will bounce back. I know this argument is very popular, that the longer this conflict lasts, the bigger the fallout, the bigger the crisis, and as you said, the bigger the tail of consequences will be. But there's another argument to that as well, that the US is constantly increasing its oil output, and it's the best oil. It's light, sweet crude oil. Apparently, it's the easiest to refine, and the US is pumping that out even more. So currently, there's a 20% shortfall in the global oil supply. If we can narrow that gap over time, then we will normalize oil prices. Now, it's easier said than done, but as other countries ramp up their oil supply over time, let's say a year or 2 years, then we wouldn't have to rely on the Strait of Hormuz at all. That's another long-term consequence. And in the meantime, I know we'll have to go through a lot of hardship, but I'm just saying that there's another side of the argument too.
So we want to see an end to the conflict. We've made that very clear for some time.
You're travelling overseas again to try to secure our fuel supply. If this blockade drags on, if these talks don't resume swiftly, are you worried that in our region it might become every country for itself, with certain countries holding back their natural resources, their oil, their gas, things like that?
Well, we've had an agreement from Singapore that two-way trade will continue to flow between Australia and Singapore. Singapore provides about 25% of our refined fuel. We provide about 32% of LNG needs for Singapore.
So we have enormous leverage. We can even increase our imports from Singapore.
Brunei is an important partner as well. They provide about 9% of our diesel. They're also a major supplier of fertiliser, which is an issue as well, of course, as a result of this conflict. And Malaysia is the third biggest supplier of fuel to Australia. So these are important countries. I'll be meeting with the Sultan of Brunei and Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim of Malaysia. I have very good relations with both of them, and we have good country-to-country relations. The investment, frankly, that we have made in building up our relationships with ASEAN countries over the last 4 years. This is why you engage with partners in our region. And one of the themes of this is that people recognise that we've got to work together at this difficult time.
Now, this might be a good answer. And as I said, like, I've already admired him. He's doing well to make sure that this fuel crisis doesn't get out of hand. But that still doesn't exonerate him from not issuing new licenses so we can drill our own oil. And also, I learned that recently, that 97% of our domestic oil does not go to our own oil refineries. It goes to Singapore. And again, that's not just his fault. You can blame the whole climate ideology for that. And I'm not going to give you my definitive position on that either, because I don't have any. I understand on the one hand, we have to be careful with our footprint, but at the same time, we have to be responsible. We haven't come up with a workable solution. This is no solution that we're going to stop extracting our own oil. We're going to shut down our own oil refineries to minimize the carbon footprint and then give it to someone else to do it so they can put the carbon dioxide into the environment. It doesn't make any sense. So even though he might have steered the ship out of dangerous waters, but this is still not a long-term solution. We've shut down our own oil refineries. I know there are a number of reasons for that, but one of the reasons is the government said, you know what, it's actually easier and cheaper to buy the finished product from other countries. And we neglected our own oil refineries. We didn't upgrade them. Those oil refineries were built after World War II. So they needed a lot of upgrading, but we didn't do any of that because we found a cheaper solution and we are exposed. We have a whole freaking continent. We have a country the size of the United States of America, rich with resources, yet here we are begging other countries for oil.
Before we let you go, Prime Minister, we've been asking our viewers this morning about different ways they've been saving fuel. A lot of different views on this. A few, however, have been questioning the point of your new $20 million advertising campaigns that's rolling out, saying that the tips in it are pretty much a statement of the bleeding obvious. Is it a good use of taxpayers' money? Why have you done this?
It certainly is. It's pointing out our 4-point plan. We're at level 2 at the moment that's been worked out with the states and territories. That's keeping the economy going, giving people public information. I certainly spoke to someone last night who, just getting out and about here in Canberra, who wasn't aware, for example, that taking the roof racks off your car will reduce the weight and reduce the fuel that you use. That's good for saving fuel. Guess what? Saves money as well. That's something they hadn't thought through. So these practical measures, every little bit does count and does make a difference. And this campaign is a modest campaign, but it's important as well that we get that direct information to people about the 4 levels that we're engaged with. The truth is that one of the things that happened at the beginning of this conflict was there was, in some cases, a more than doubling of demand when it wasn't necessary. So that shows that there was misinformation out there. People filling up jerry cans and putting them in the back of utes and filling up cars. That was behaviour that not only didn't help the situation, it also could be quite dangerous to fill up your garage. It's a bit different filling up your garage with fuel as opposed to filling it up with toilet paper that we saw happen during the COVID pandemic.
Yeah, these houses became sitting time bombs.
So these practical information is really important for people.
So that was the end of the interview, I think. Now, again, I'm going to criticize my own side for unfairly criticizing him. So basically what they're saying is that on the one hand, you're saying, don't worry, our fuel supply lines are secure. Our petrol stations are not going to run dry. But then on the other hand, you're telling people to be smart with your fuel consumption. Yeah, that's not a fair criticism, because if people think that there is going to be a shortage, then they're going to start filling up. As we saw, people were rationing petrol. So that creates a downward spiral, and that actually compounds the problem. And secondly, as a prime minister, you can never say that, oh, guys, by the way, we're going to run dry in 3 weeks' time. That's going to cause panic. So no prime minister can say that. And I was thinking about it, that maybe under those circumstances, maybe you can even lie. I think you have to lie. But these politicians are clever. That's why they are there and we are here. They don't explicitly lie, but they have the art of spin doctoring. As he said perfectly, he said, if people start rationing fuel, then that is going to cause a shortage, which wouldn't have been caused if they kept buying petrol as normal. So, I don't know. I guess I didn't criticize him much in this video. Well, I don't know. Maybe I think this is the only video in which I'll praise or I'll won't go as hard on Anthony Albanese as I do in my other videos, because yes, this was the most immediate threat, but it's not the biggest threat. But Australia is facing a bigger threat, which is a demographic collapse, a total societal collapse, as we have seen in Europe, as we are looking at it in the UK almost every day. These videos of borderline anarchy are coming out of the UK almost every single day now. That is going to happen in Australia, and Anthony Albanese is not doing anything about it. In fact, he's actually adding to that problem. He's compounding that problem.